What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video on Sanguinius 40K. As always, this is me, Sam Procopio, your grateful host here. And I'm going to be running you through just a couple different topics today. As you could tell by the title, we're going to be looking at the LVO recap that I just went through, and it was a really fun event, really good time. We're going to shift straight from LVO and the Last of Nephilim right into Arks of Omen, kind of what to expect, how to kind of prepare best for it as Blood Angel players competitively. And, I guess what is good, what is maybe bad, what to expect, what to avoid. And then from there, we'll kind of conclude with some upcoming events that I have going are coming on up for me and, on the horizon. So, because I do have quite a few. So without further ado, we'll jump right into the LVO recap. And LVO was a really fun event. It was my first ever time going, and I was fighting for top Blood Angel player in the world. Spoiler alert, I actually finished second overall, only by a few ITC points. So shout out to the gentleman who finished first. I forget his full name. I think it's Alejandro. So shout out to him. He obviously did a really great job, so kudos. So was able to at least finish or lock up second. And you know what? I mean, in a season filled with ups and downs and Blood Angels, rising to the top at points and actually going on to win the event. So another shout out to Jack Harpster, good friend there. Even winning the event, it was a really crazy year with a lot of changes, a lot of different rules we saw introduced, taken away. Obviously a lot of things have transitioned out of Nephilim now, so we've got some big shoes to fill with, the loss of Armor of Contempt, but we've got some ways that we'll get into in a bit. And then in terms of LVO itself, I mean, I don't want to criticize the event in any negative way. I think that, I think we've seen that there's been a broad, take on terrain and how it affected different matchups, and some tables not being, fully symmetrical or not to competitive standards, whatever people were saying or calling it online. Whether that is true, whether that, is not totally true, I'd rather leave that judgment for a different channel. Overall, I felt like it was definitely a well-run event. Really tough to run an event when you have 950 people in a room all playing the same game, and that's not even including the other games that they had running. So shout out to Frontline Gaming for keeping everything in order. And besides, all the constructive criticism they got and any of the feedback, they know what to do to make things better next time around. And if terrain is one of them, I'm sure they'll take all the feedback to heart. LVO 2024 will be maybe the best one yet, or probably will be. So away from, I guess, that side of the game, I had 6 really tough games. I think I say that every time I come here and make a video, and I'm not just saying that to try and toot my own horn. But we started off, I think, round 1 against Kit Smith Hanna, who's an incredible player from the States. And that was a literal, coin flip at the end. Anyone could have won that. I just barely squeaked it out. Then round 2, I played a demon player, super nice guy. And that was just like a 5 demons rush at your face list. And I was able to prevail there. Round 3, I played against a gentleman, I think his name was Matthew, from XPZ, I believe. And if I'm wrong, I apologize at this present time. But that was a really tough game because that was an Emperor's Children build that counters Blood Angels quite hard. But ultimately I was able to play on a mission that did favor the speed of my army, which was, I believe it was Data Scry Salvage. And for those of you who don't know the name off the top of your head, that's the one with 4 objectives kind of down the center line, and then 1 in each deployment zone. So a 6 objective mission on a hold 2, hold 3, hold more. So I was able to take that one. So kind of going 3-0 going into day 2, just feeling pretty good. And then I played an amazing gentleman by the name of Evan. So Evan, if you're watching this, huge shout out to you, Evan Thompson, who ended up making it to top 8 and actually was in the top 8 of LVO last year. I think getting knocked out by both winners, actually, now that I think about it, which is an incredible feat now that I just thought about that. So Evan was an awesome general. We had a wicked game. He was playing his Tau, which was, I knew on paper, going to be really tough. And, I didn't want to blame the board too much. It was actually a bit of an unlucky mission for me rather than the board itself. The board didn't help me. I didn't really have too many places to hide against the Tau gun line. But regardless, you always make it work. I think I've always managed to make it work, even in the worst situations, historically. But the mission was mission 21, where you can't forward deploy, you can't pre-game move, so no Death Company, Forlorn Fearing, sad times. And basically on that mission, there's a big bonus for going second with the end game score. And unfortunately, I went first. So a couple things didn't go my way there. But hey, if he wasn't as good of a general as he was, I still think I could have definitely squeezed that game out. But he played it amazing. He knew how to screen me. He knew what to expect. I was pulling out little tricks here and there, with some little staging plays, trying to fish out some of his units. He wasn't falling for it. He just kind of kept to his game plan. He knew he was going to get a ton of late points, and he really executed. And I believe at one point it was like top of 4 for me, and I had just scored my points for turn 4 going into his. And I think I was up by something like, 45 points. And then with his bottom of 4 scoring, and then his turn or his end game scoring, which saw him, get his last, aerospace relays, his decisive action, back-to-back turns, all his no prisoners points, and of course the big bonus and primary. He ended up taking it, I think by 7 points. So it was a super close game still, with all things against me. But hey, like I said, if he didn't play as well as he did, I still probably would have given it a better go in terms of beating a different Tau player. But so anyway, so I'm now 3-1 at this point, going into a really great guy who's playing Genestealer Cult. And unfortunately for him, I knew the matchup extremely well, as my sparring partner in my dojo is a gentleman by the name of Christian. He's an amazing Genestealer player, Genestealer Cult player from Canada, and pretty much my best friend in the hobby. So he definitely prepared me for this one unintentionally, and I knew that pretty quick. And I knew I could basically, with Armor of Contempt, especially with cover, and just kind of screening out really well, because I was used to that, I was able to basically stat check this army, and we saw pretty quick that the game would go in my favor. And but he still played some really great 40k with some awesome tactics. He kept it close, so I ended up just taking that one there. And in the last game too, everyone was tired. Everyone was pretty on edge, because you just kind of want to wrap up the day. And especially, it's been a really long week for a lot of people. So that game wrapped up pretty early with my opponent, which was fortunate for both of us, because we didn't have to play the full 2.5 hours or whatever it was. And I was able to take that 1-2 against a Black Legion list with some Plague Marines in it, which was a really, really cool build. So that was a tough game as well. Overall though, finishing 5-1 at my first LVO, I think I was 24th in the tournament. I was pretty proud with that result. I mean, obviously, you start to win games, you start to see how you're performing, you're playing good opponents, you're winning, and then you always want more. That's kind of what I've learned. But not being too focused on what's the next step that you could have got, but just be happy and proud of the results that you do have. So that was really cool to finish 5-1. We were proud of one of our local amazing players that we have in the GTA. His name's Tim Dietlifs, and for those of you who maybe don't know his name too well, please go check out his podcast. They're an amazing group that do the podcast by the name of Hump Day 40K, and they're super funny. They're super knowledgeable of the game. He was on Team Canada with me last year, and he actually went to the Shadow Round going 6-0. And only losing to Mike Porter with his Harlequins in a mirror match by like 3 points or something like that. It was crazy close. And out of everybody running Harlequins in the world besides Mike Porter, to take it to that guy, I would definitely put my money on Tim. So huge shout out to him, because he was just an amazing friend to have alongside. We were in the same room, so it was a really cool experience. And we supported him, all the way. And he was the highest placing Canadian at the event. I believe in 14th he ended up. So really cool to see him do that, and it was a super proud moment as our friend group had for him. Kind of in conclusion, to wrap up the entire season now. Obviously, I had goals in mind in terms of finishing best in faction Blood Angels. I was pushing for #1 in Canada, as I locked that up last year. During a COVID season. So, I mean, I think a lot of people kind of thought, maybe if the better players were all playing full time, maybe I wouldn't have gotten it, which is here nor there. but I'm still proud of finishing first during that previous COVID season. So going into this year, I just want to see how far I could go with it. And then I believe the final standings, or the final scores I was able to accomplish this year, was basically 23rd in the world overall, first in Canada for Blood Angels, and second overall in the world for Blood Angels. So for one full season worth of work in a year where I went and represented Canada, and went undefeated at the WTC all week, and for singles and teams, and then obviously having a couple of GT wins. Definitely couldn't complain about the season I had, and obviously hungry for more, but just super proud of all the work that I've put in, and especially with all of the friends that I have alongside me to kind of get these results. So definitely couldn't have done it without all of them, especially without the help of the guys on Team Canada, kind of, just helping me, in more than 40K ways, even just like mentally and emotionally at times when I was going through a pretty rough time. So shout out to all those guys. Now kind of shifting our gears to Arks of Omen. It did change a lot for us, to be very blunt about it. And, it did take away, Armor of Contempt with the data slate. The data slate did give us sticky objectives for our troops, which was cool. I thought it was definitely something that's come up in a couple practice games already, where I'm like, cool, I have the liberty of now doing this, maybe redeploying a Phobos unit like infiltrators, which I'm leaning into now. So definitely some cool tricks, but you really do feel the loss of Armor of Contempt. For those of you who have played it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But for those of you who haven't, you definitely can't leave your sword out in the wind, for lack of better terms, because you have to imagine at this point the game is just as killy as ever, but we're not as resilient as we've possibly been. So whatever's out in the wind now at this point is as good as gone. That's what I've learned, and it's not a bad thing. And with all of the free upgrades and a lot of the unit drops that we've seen for just Space Marines in general, I think it's really, really solid now that we can play a better trading game just by taking a lot of these extra utility units that can see us essentially, push into certain areas of the board, and then not have to, dedicate an entire Sanguinary Guard squad to go kill, like a 5-man rack unit, or whatever it may be, like from an Eldari faction of like 60 points worth of Rangers, or however many points they are. So it's nice that we can bring these units like Assault Marines, extra troops now that they're a bit cheaper and a bit more reliable for us in terms of what they're doing, like infiltrators with screening. So, I mean, overall, I'm feeling okay about it. Definitely the big things that are going to be a problem for us is armies that can shoot, and then of course the board is going to make a huge difference in those games. So if you're thinking, Leagues of Votann, Tau, Iron Hands, and then armies like Custodes, just because of how efficient they are at killing Marines, those are the armies that we really need to pay attention for and really look out for. I mean, at this point, in the hands of any good general, any single faction is going to give you a hard time. So I mean, let's just not rule out any faction at any point. But those are the main ones that I'm realizing that you really need to prepare for and make sure you have adequate terrain in order to kind of stand a chance against them. So if you're playing player place terrain, I always think that's a better way to do things. Or if you're going to an event with GW terrain, it's definitely it's going to be a solid time for us, just because we're able to stage and hide. But like I said, not overcommitting into the open and basically, putting the sword out into the wind. I don't know why I'm using that a lot today, but sword out in the wind is definitely not what we're looking for. Then in terms of units that I've kind of, relied on and I've turned to, I know for a long time I've told all you guys that the Wrath of Baal on the Ancient was just not worth it. And I still stick to that to this day with Nephilim and Nachmund, because of the way that we played a castle style in Nachmund, and the way that I felt like we just didn't need to, push into certain areas of the board with 2 extra inches in Nephilim. But for some reason now that we're playing a bit more MSU, and the fact that we need to have these essentially like more surgical strikes now from these 5-mans or 6-mans of whatever we're sending out, I actually do think that the extra range is actually pretty beneficial in terms of how we're moving around the board, and it allows us to just stage in better areas of the board as well, because now we're trying to be in a few more areas than we wanted to used to be, because before it was very much how we could progress as a unit, like quite literally the entire army can move forward together, and then kind of unleash a giant assault when it needs to kind of hammer a game home if we had to. But now I'm realizing you're trying to win these little battles in different areas of the board, depending on what you're going up against. So now it's more like, okay, 14 inches, we can go here with Chapter Master. Then 14 inches, we can go here with +1 to hit. So there's a different, a different feel, I believe, to Arks of Omen that I'm seeing now. Or at least from my perspective, please always state in the comments if you're feeling something different, or if you still think the Ancient's not worth it, or if you think he's better than ever. By all means, I'm always open to hearing some feedback and taking a look at some things if you guys have any ideas, and then I can obviously report back with my findings. But overall, I'm kind of seeing some niche units coming back into the forefront of what we need. So obviously, I've always told you guys about scouts and a speeder since day one. They're definitely top of the list of what we should be bringing into a Nephilim list. Arguably, you could bring 2 of them now for their value and what they're doing. So I mean, just a brief example of what I'm bringing now with a scout unit. It's you have a combi melta thunderhammer on the sergeant. You have 3 sniper rifles, and you have a heavy bolter, all with camo cloaks on each of these models, and it's all coming in at 60 points. So I mean, the other day I had 5 of them shoot and charge into a 5-man Grey Knight strike squad, and I picked up all 5. So it was actually pretty interesting to see that. Then kind of moving forward into different other units. I mean, the Ball Predator is an actually interesting idea for what it does for 110 points. Personally, if I'm going to bring a unit like that, I would at that point just pay the extra 40 points for the Gladiator Reaper, just because of the sheer volume of what it's done. And then in terms of other long-range firepower, I recently was testing a Relic Contemptor Dreadnought to bring that back into the list. And I was about this close to submitting it into my list for this upcoming weekend, for this major. But then I kind of realized that, once it has done its job one time, your opponent, either they don't let it do its job, or after they've seen it do its job one time, they basically hide for the rest of the game from it, and it's not as mobile as we would need it to be. And the board that we're playing on, which is the major reason of why I decided to make this, the choice of not bringing it, is just that you could make the board very dense because it's player placed terrain with 2 fixed center ruins. So this guy potentially might not be shooting all game, or he might just shoot once at some token unit, which we could deal with a different way. So instead of him, I dropped that, saved the CP, used that CP on the priest to have the Teeth of Terra, so you could be a bit more of a killy trade piece now. And then with those savings, I upgraded an Incursor squad to an Infiltrator. So now I have 3 Infiltrator squads in this list. And then that guy turned into 5 Boltstorm Aggressors, which I feel like offer a ton of utility. For those of you who don't know off the top of your head what those guys are doing, they're shooting 6 shots plus D6 each. So that's 30 plus 5d6 shots with blast, depending on what you're shooting at. And they also have, on the charge as Blood Angels, quick math, I think it's 26 power fist attacks. So definitely not nothing. And the fact that they're C5 with a 3-up save, +1 save against damage 1 weapons, and possibly transhuman, both for 1 CP each. I think it's a pretty good combination and a pretty decent unit to have as more of a I guess like an offensive line, if you're thinking football strategy. But overall, I feel like it's a decent list I'm bringing to this event. And like I mentioned, it's the triple Infiltrator. It's my typical Chapter Master with the combination of Rites of War, Visage of Death. Can't leave home without that. Then it's my Sanguinary Priest with the Selfless Healer and Teeth of Terra. Then it's the 3x. Oh, sorry, not 3x, because it's 3 squads of Sanguinary Guard, 1 of 7, 1 of 6, and 1 of 5. I know, I'm weird like that. But they all have their roles and will always do what they need to for me. With all Inferno pistols in there and a different assortment of different weapons I won't get into. 1 squad of Death Company with 4 Thunder Hammers, 1 Power Fist, and an Inferno pistol. The scouts that I mentioned earlier are in the elite slots, and then I have the 5 aggressors and the Ancient to fill out the rest of the elites. And then maybe you guys might be wondering, in case, why do I have 7 elites and there's only 6 allowed? Well, because a character doesn't take up one of those slots, you're actually able to take, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, hopefully, but you're allowed to take up to 3 additional elite characters that don't count towards the 6 elite slots that you can take for your army. So in theory, you could have a normal Primaris Apothecary, an Ancient, and the Judiciary, or Judicaire, however you say that. So I decided to go with the Ancient with the Wrath of Baal. to help out this army. Then we go into the fast attack. I have 2 assault squads, 1 of 6 and then 1 of 5. Those with all the free weapons you can possibly take on them. They're the best ones. And then into the heavy support, I have a whirlwind because I feel like now more than ever, a fight last and way to turn off Overwatch from a distance without sacrificing a unit to do one of those things, I think is going to be super crucial, moving forward, and it's all for 1 CP. So far in practice, it's been pretty good for me. And I think it'll hopefully pay off this weekend, and well, we're going to find out shortly. And then obviously the Land Speeder Storm is in the dedicated transport slot for the scouts. So overall, going into this event with Arks of Omen, I feel like a big question a lot of people have been asking me lately, and I do have a couple of clients that I'm working with, and I always receive the question of what secondaries am I taking? Because we did lose Fury of the Lost, so we can't lean into that anymore with Death Company. We lost Death from Above, so we can't also just build into a bunch of different jump pack units or things coming out of reserve and cycling units and scoring. Although it was difficult, it was definitely achievable and something that I did for a lot of my games, especially throughout the entire WTC. I think I took that in like 11 out of my 13 games. So now it does put us in a tough spot, to be very blunt about it. And I feel like right now the main thing that we're looking to do is take Relentless Assault, really lean into that. Unless you're playing a super fast army that basically wants to shift the board with you, I think Relentless is the way to go. Otherwise, you can definitely look for behind enemy lines. It's not a bad choice at all. I just don't like behind enemy lines as much because you have to be wholly within. But if you think your opponent is going to get into your backfield and start to mess with your Relentless points, it's definitely not a bad option at all. The other one that I think is an auto include for us is definitely either one or the other of either banners or retrieve battlefield data. So that's going to be, I think, an auto include that we're just going to pick one or the other, depending on who we're up against. And something to keep in mind too, that maybe a lot of opponents, a lot of Blood Angel players don't take into consideration when they're up against certain opposition, is the fact that if you don't need to get too aggressive to feed into your opponent's game plan of, their secondaries and what they're taking, like if they're taking no prisoners or assassinate or just some sort of specific faction secondary that revolves around killing you or getting to or basically that you could be throwing away by trying to push into their zone, then you could see yourself, essentially changing your strategy a little bit and maybe half the amount of, no prisoners points that they're going to collect over the course of a game by being more defensive. And what I mean by that is normally where we would want to get, retrieve battlefield data and push into 2 different quarters near them, or possibly sacrifice a different unit on a different quarter and then just get shot and die. We could, maybe comfortably now just put up 2 banners, hold that all game for a solid 10 points. And that's actually better than us scanning 3 different zones anyway, which would have been 8 points. So just kind of keeping that in mind as well when making secondary selections, I think is going to go a really long way. And then I think the final secondary that we should be looking at, this is very board dependent and of course depends on, a few different factors of maybe how much chaff you have in your army or, what you're using in your army. So that's kind of the big differentiator here when choosing this. But like with my list that I just described to you guys, Oaths of Moment is currently the one thing that's penciled in to basically every game plan right now. And that would quickly be replaced with something that my opponent gives up, like if they bleed no prisoners points, like if they're a Necron army or Gene Stealer cults, or if they're, a psychic heavy army like Grey Knights, Thousand Suns, then maybe we can look at a Bore the Witch because I don't have a librarian in mind. So definitely in those games, I feel like you're going to want to immediately swap or like a bring it down if you're into a tank heavy guard list. So definitely immediately swap for one of those. But in some games where you can't pick anything else and there's nothing really better for you, unless you specifically built a strategy into your game for like Codex Warfare or something like that, which my list has not, then that's kind of what we're looking at. Now, there is an argument, and I've kind of seen this, work in some sense where I do currently have a client who tested this out and has seen some success with it. And it's definitely just his style, which I really like, the fact that, I'm able to help these people with, leaning into their style and not playing the type of game that I usually play, because it's definitely not for everybody. But basically choosing like 3 to 4 dedicated heavy support units, or not heavy support units, but heavy support or heavy weapon units rather, that could really continuously score by killing things, consistently over the course of a game, like grab devastators, like a dreadnought with specific heavy weapons, and having multi-meltas on speeders or something, and then staying in devastator doctrine depending on what army you're going up against, and just basically racking up 2 points a kill for doing so. And like there's little techniques and ways to get away with that I'm definitely going to look at in the future. Like, for example, if you stay in devastator doctrine and you're trying to kill 10 guardsmen just out in the open, right? You're thinking to yourself, okay, how am I effectively going to do that when I just shot my grabs devs over here? How am I going to get away with killing that? Now, all of a sudden, if you shoot 2 land speeders, right, into this unit, you shoot the first assault cannon, land speeder tornado, I should say. You shoot the first assault cannon, see what happens, then shoot the multi-melta, also see what happens. And then from there, it's like you can now decide to actually maybe even leave a few extra bodies alive if you can afford to for another turn, or just finish off the rest of the job with the second tornado, get another 2 points. So you can actually pace how you're scoring the secondary, which is really, I think, an interesting thing. And I think we're going to see a couple of chaff units here or there, or like individual models that just kind of have to do these different things for armies, whether it be a spawn or an Alaris custodian, or like I mentioned, these like guardsmen that are just running around the table. You're kind of picking up easy kills here and there. So, I mean, you're looking at, like, on average, probably like a 10 to 12 on a secondary like that, depending on, again, the army that you're going into and what tools you're bringing to deal with these units. So I think overall, it's a really interesting build. But in the meantime, if you haven't built for it, obviously, it's not really a great secondary to go for. And then in that sense, Oath of Moment just seems to be like the one where, worst case, I go first. I don't even go to the second. I don't go to the center of the table at all, unless I'm really hammering the opponent for whatever reason, and he's made some mistakes and I've capitalized. And just kind of look for a solid like 5 to 7 on it, which is better than obviously a 0. And then of course, if you're going second, the game becomes a lot easier, because now you can kind of throw these chaff units. Like I have my scouts, I'll just throw the storm out, I'll just throw maybe a 5-man assault marine squad, or maybe I'll just bully the middle with an aggressor squad if he doesn't have a ton of shooting. So all of a sudden it gives you a bit more flexibility. And I know we can't control first or second, but now all of a sudden you're settling for what you can get going first, and definitely can take advantage of the secondary if you're going second. So that's kind of to summarize what I feel like we should do in terms of secondaries and units that we should be taking. And remember, all the units that I mentioned that are in my list and what I like and don't like, all is about my play style and kind of how I see the game. So if you have a favorite dreadnought, or if you have a different Primaris unit that I didn't mention, of course, by all means, throw it on the table, get the most out of it. I know you can. It's just about how we're utilizing it, and basically what we're bringing around it to make them work. Because I think there really is a way to make a lot of things work that people just kind of, I guess, throw in the towel a bit too easy if it gets shot turn 1 in one game because we misdeployed it or didn't strategic reserve it, which we can now do for free. So moving towards the end of this, and I feel like every single time I come into a video, it's more like a podcast style at this point, because I don't have as much time and as the same amount of resources to kind of be doing these battle reports or whatnot like I used to at tournaments. But I feel like just dropping some knowledge here and there is hopefully helpful for you guys watching and listening. Coming up, I have a couple of pretty big events. So I have a major actually taking place tomorrow, which is going to be February 11th and 12th. The 12th is actually my birthday, so knock on wood, we'll see what I can do for my birthday as a present. But no, jokes aside, it's going to be a really tough event. The list I mentioned I'm bringing, and it's going to be, I believe, like 135 players. There's going to be a lot of custodies. There's a lot of Tau, a lot of guard, a bunch of Marines, obviously. So it's going to be a really tough field, but I'm looking forward to it. We've got the best players from across Canada showing up. So it's going to be a really great place to test my mettle, and just overall, just how my current first iteration of my Arks of Omen competitive list will do in a really competitive field. After that, I have a really big, I believe, major sized event in Barrie, Ontario, which is the Barrie Bash. That's going to be a really fun event as well. Pretty much, I guess, similar to Stutter Snarling. Really big event, with a really big Canadian event with the best of Canada, pretty much coming from all around. And then towards, I believe it is end of March, I'll be going to the All Is Dust GT, I believe. That's what I have on the calendar so far. So I'm planning on that, which we have a bunch of top Canadian talent going there again, with even, I think, some great American talent showing up just from over the border. So that'll be a really great event, and it's run by some awesome guys. The guys from StatCheck and the main guy running it, Nick Blackburn. He's an amazing general, and he knows how to run an event. So should be a really great one. Looking forward to that. And then the weekend after, we have the biggest team tournament in Canada called the Canhammer Team Tournament, where I will be bringing a team. We also have a secondary team coming as well, because I've been fortunate enough to meet some really great people and grow into quite a big squad. So we have 2 teams going out, and we do have, the one team I'm on that we're hoping to kind of push for a really good result. I believe at the last Canhammer Team Tournament, we finished in 4th. So I'd love to podium with my team this time around, and I think we have the capabilities to do so with the factions that we will bring. So without further ado, I will do my best to, and I keep saying this, and then I always feel like there's a period of time when I don't get, a video up too soon, but I'll do my best to kind of keep you guys posted on all the success. It's a brand new year, new things on the horizon. Arks of Omen, let's try and hit this the ground running with it. And as always, the support is greatly appreciated. So please like, share, and subscribe. And obviously, we will see you in the next video. So thanks for now, and see you later.